Yeah, hi Peter Sidgreaves, welcome back to the Stephen Shields radio show. Lots happened with our Liberal government. Gladys Berejiklian has resigned. Dominic Perrottet took over. How do you feel about Gladys? And we just had a council election on the weekend.
Yeah, look, starting with how I feel about Gladys, look, it's certainly upsetting. I was a good big fan of Gladys, as was a lot of people that I know down here in the Camden electorate. And but you know what? As a government, you've got to move on. And we have a new premier now, Dominic Perrottet, and we're just getting back to what's important, and that is the people of our own communities.
Yeah, because he used to be the member for Epping as well, and. Yes. Also, too, there's a Omicron variant of COVID that came from South Africa as well. Now, I'm hoping that we're not going to be in another lockdown again. That's my fear.
Oh, look, no, certainly nobody wants another lockdown, and that's the same with the government. Yeah, so this is it's very concerning at the moment. I think it's only limited to a handful of sites, and I know that and then those people are isolating, which is good. But yeah, it certainly brings an element of fear back. But look, I can just tell you at this point in time, our government is determined to stay on track for what we've committed to the public. And although that might turn around, that would be certainly our last option. So. Obviously, protecting people and their families is probably the most important thing that we can be doing. But I am not aware at this point in time of any intention to change course from our roadmap to recovery.
Yeah, it's been New South Wales has been hit very hard this year, economically, financially as well. A lot of confusion in the media. But Dominic Perrottet seems to be more focused on families by the sounds of it. Let's see how all he goes in 6 months to a year's time, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's right. And certainly, like any premier, he'll be judged, over time. I would say that I think he's made an outstanding beginning, has had an outstanding beginning, and certainly he'll be in a tough situation if anything goes on further with Omicron. But as I say, even as a government, we're just focused on our roadmap to recovery and really focusing on rebounding the economy like we did after COVID in 2020. And there are early signs to suggest that we're actually doing exactly that. And look, my yardstick during this year's lockdown was always, that as long as we can spend Christmas with our families and friends, that was my yardstick, and certainly it appears at this point in time that will be the case, and look, that's great news. And the last thing we want is for a really disappointing 2022 after a couple of years that we've had. So my focus at the moment is to staying positive and just sticking to the roadmap, and really ultimately we'll have to wait and see what happens with Omicron. And more importantly, I'm aware that the federal government, their agencies are looking at how effective the vaccines that we've all had, how effective they will be against Omicron. And so, we'll wait to hear that information as well. So I remember I did see the Pfizer CEO, at least the Australian CEO, talking about that they really felt that their vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, would be able to tackle Omicron. So if that's the case, given certainly across New South Wales, but in particular over Camden, our extremely high rates of vaccination should be what will keep us safe and keep us out of another lockdown.
Yeah, because I had AstraZeneca. I think I've got to get a booster shot next year, Peter.
So booster shots at this point in time anyway are all Pfizer. So, as I say, I'm not certain about ultimately what we'll find out, I guess, over the next couple of weeks from the testing of that therapeutic goods therapeutic goods association and Otago are doing. And fingers crossed that is positive, that the vaccinations that we've already had will take care of us. And if that's the case, then Australia, New South Wales, and will certainly be in a good position for 2022.
How long's the booster shot last for, usually?
It varies. It varies per vaccine, depending on whether you get, as I say, I mean, all booster shots, to my understanding, are all Pfizer now. But so my understanding, Pfizer, it's about 4 to 8 months.
Yeah.
Efficacy. So if that's the case, look, I think that there'll be no question that there'll be to be fully vaccinated at some point in time. Maybe towards the beginning of winter next year, people will be required to have another a booster shot. So I know that I've had my booster already, and others are lining up now to have theirs, which is I think is probably really important given the uncertainty of this Omicron and how contagious it is and what will be the impact on health from it. But so as I say, keeping positive. Encouraging those who want to get the booster shots to go ahead and do that, and hopefully, as I say, that'll keep us out of any future lockdowns.
Yeah, like there's a lot of conspiracy theories about how this started in Wuhan. Could it have been started in a laboratory or someone let this virus out? I know Donald Trump commented about it, but coronavirus goes back to SARS. It's another form of SARS as well.
No, it does. So, coronavirus ultimately is classified as the same as a cold, and it does go back to SARS. So, I think it's not as if we don't have any knowledge about these variants at this point in time, and we will wait and hear what those experts are saying. But international travel, that'll be the tough one. That's typically where these things kind of enter our country from. And so ultimately, we've got to do what we can to keep people safe and to keep any new variant of the virus coming in, and to make sure that we know how to deal with any new variant of the virus.
Yeah, because Joe Biden's stopping all travel to and from South Africa and the United States as well. The thing is, like, are our international borders shut still, or are they still letting people in?
Look, to be honest with you, I mean, I couldn't give you a 100% up-to-date answer on that. That's a federal matter. But I would imagine that certainly for a period of time they may be suspended. I think that is what the case is. And I would just have to confirm, which I don't know, would be whether or not returning citizens of Australia would still be allowed to enter.
Now,
I suspect that's still going ahead.
Because, to leave the country, you got to pay for the COVID test out of your pocket. It's expensive.
Yeah, certainly when you enter other countries, that's true.
That's expensive, Peter.
No, I know that. So ultimately that's up to the choice of the traveller, whether they wish to do that or not. So and I know that people, that have family over in different countries over the world, and they're prepared to do that just to see their family, which they potentially haven't had the chance to do for 2 years.
Yeah, it's quite scary, all this COVID stuff. I wonder how long this will go for. Who knows? And but I did read something on one of the papers over the weekend that would suggest that that will require COVID boosters at least for the next 5 years. But in many ways, so I suspect that it'll be like the flu vaccine, the common flu vaccine that we get every year. In some way, that'll be the same. And there's no telling how long that will go on for, but. And I know there's work being done as to see whether or not those cold and flu vaccines can actually be done in a single dose with the COVID vaccines. I don't know how successful that has been, but that would just suggest that it would just make things even easier if people are, which many Australians do, go and get that cold and flu vaccine every year. Yeah, because COVID-19 spreads so quick. It spreads in the air too. We had the Delta variant, which was affecting young people. Now this coming from South Africa, but who knows? Could there be more variants in the future? We don't know.
I would expect there will be. But this is where it doesn't mean that every variant we get is actually more contagious. More to lead to more serious health problems. But so Omicron will be interesting to see what that'll be like. But I know there have been variants that they're named variants, but they never really reach Australia, or they're never that significant compared to, for example, the Delta and potentially Omicron.
Also, too, Joe Biden pulled all American troops out from Afghanistan, and Australian troops are pulled out too. This war was going on, I think, before I was even born.
That would be right. So, I remember certainly when they began in Kuwait, and that was in the early 90s from memory. So, and look, it's just a region that's very unstable, and ultimately now, certainly the United States and Australia, and they've decided to pull their troops, and I know there was a big effort to try and remove a lot of those locals that didn't want to stay there under the Taliban control, but unfortunately time ran out, and that time's dictated by them, not by us or the United States.
Yeah, John Howard. This was going back to when John Howard was our Prime Minister too, as well.
That's exactly right. So, and certainly when they invaded Iraq, that was, I think you'll find that at the time when all the bombings of the Trade Center and so forth, I think John Howard might have been in the United States at that one time.
See, he was supporting the war. He said, Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. They couldn't find anything. I don't know why he was supporting it, to be honest.
Look, it all depends, and none of us are privileged to, what evidence that potentially the United States or any other ally had. But ultimately, you're right. I mean, they didn't find any weapons of mass destruction. But as I say, it's a very unstable region, and look, I wouldn't be able to tell you whether that was justified or not. But certainly my view on these things that when we're living in privileged countries like Australia, we should really be helping those who aren't as fortunate, and particularly in unstable regions where alternatives may be death. Right, so we're fortunate, and we should be assisting those countries and those people in countries that aren't that fortunate.
Yeah, and also too, a change of premier too as well. Hopefully, Dominic Perrottet can change as well. But if you're a premier, like we had Mike Baird, Barry O'Farrell didn't declare a bottle of wine as well. He was supposed to. And we had Mike Baird. What happened? Did he resign and then Gladys took over?
No, he resigned. So, and he resigned from memory. I think he resigned over the Christmas break. So, that was sudden, but I certainly don't know the reasons behind that. But then, and then there's been, so Gladys took over, and then she, by her choice, decided to stand down, not only from her role as a premier, but from government altogether, so that she could focus on the investigation that ICAC are currently taking, and without any distraction from what the New South Wales government is doing.
Because this goes back, it was Eddie O.B. They wanted to, I think they were going to build a conservatorium of music in Goulburn or something, and they tapped his phone. And listening to ICAC can tap your phone if you're under investigation.
Look, I couldn't talk about Eddie O.B. What I'm certainly aware of is that he was found guilty in a court of law on other charges. But this goes back to a relationship that she had with Darryl Maguire, who was the member for Wagga Wagga.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does being a Liberal candidate, Peter, does that make the party look bad when someone higher up's doing corruptible things?
Well, that's yet to be found, Stephen. And one of the concerns I have is that how long it takes to, and how public the whole process is. Look, I'm certainly, as a member of Parliament, I'm very happy to be held to account. But many of these times that when they publicly name who they're investigating, there's many of these cases where they're found to have no case to answer for. So ultimately, as I say, I think there's absolutely need for an independent watchdog. I just think that until people are found to have a case to answer for, I won't be commenting one way or the other. But what I do know is that Gladys was a very genuine person, certainly a very honest and compassionate person, and certainly I'll be waiting to see what those findings are. But and hopefully, not only for Gladys but for the integrity of members of Parliament, that's found that she's had no case to answer for.
It's not just the Liberal, it's the Labor government. Kevin Rudd was called to the Royal Commission a few years ago over corruptible things. He was Prime Minister of Australia.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's certainly not all Liberal and certainly not all Labor, but it's certainly a combination of those. So, as I say, nobody that I know of is actually suggesting for a minute that we shouldn't have an independent watchdog. My feelings are that, there's no reason why a lot of what they do couldn't be done out of the public, including their investigations, including their calling witnesses, until, in my view, no one should be known until there's a finding against them.
Yeah, there has to be evidence in a court of law, Peter, to prove you're guilty.
Yeah, and that's the issue. ICAC is in a court of law.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not here to criticise them, but what I would say is that, you're innocent, in my view, until you're proven guilty.
Because ICAC, you can be under investigation from ICAC if they suspect you're doing something wrong, too.
Yes. Or if they have a report of corrupt conduct from any other body or any other member of Parliament, then yes, they can investigate it.
What's the difference between ICAC and the federal police?
Look, to be honest with you, because in state politics we don't have any dealings with the federal police. But if you're talking about a very topical matter at the moment with regards to a federal ICAC, my personal view is that independent watchdog, I would always be supportive of that for any level of government. But as I say, I think there's some processes that I personally would like to see change.
Also, too, Australia was very slow to close our borders in 2020 as well, Peter. I reckon this pandemic could have been contained quicker if we had had gone into it. Because Wuhan, China, they went into, an 80-day full lockdown. We were supposed to have a full lockdown in New South Wales, but we clearly didn't do a full lockdown Melbourne.
The first, from memory, I'm just going off memory, Steve, but the first recorded case of COVID, which was a traveller from Wuhan, was, I'm trying to think now, but I think roughly around Australia Day. And it wasn't until March that we went into a lockdown. But ultimately, in terms of closing international borders, and in terms of declaring essentially a pandemic, they're matters for federal government. And look, what I honestly hope has happened, given the experience we've had over 2020 and the experience we've now had over 2021, is that if you're working on any project and you do a post-project review, and the idea of that is that you take out lessons that have been learned, and then you implement those into your plans. For example, in the case that we had Omicron proves to be very contagious, very infectious, and starts taking more lives, then you'd hope that the lessons that we've learned over 2020 and 2021 would be implemented so that we deal with these things a lot quicker.
Yeah, you look at the United States, Peter, they never took COVID seriously. Like, for them, they didn't care.
Right. Yep.
They give them the Johnson & Johnson so they can go watch the Super Bowl and all that. I don't know. Why don't some countries take this stuff seriously like we do in Australia, New Zealand, you know?
Oh, look, I probably couldn't answer that, but, you know, I mean, what we've been privileged in the past is that, for example, you know, you talk about Ebola and other types of these, you know, epidemics. You know, as an island nation, we were actually kept free from some of those. That's not to say that Australia's been, you know, ignorant to what the potential was, but I really couldn't tell you why other countries, for example, certainly their populations are a lot larger. But, you know, I know in the early days, Singapore was one of the nations that we looked to as a country and a state as to how they were managing it. And then they went back into a spike. So, you know, look, yes, there's lessons to be learned from what's happening overseas, particularly during their winter while we're in summer, and you know, setting an expectation amongst, you know, doctors at least, you know, and nurses and health professionals that this is what could happen. How are we going to deal with it if it comes to Australia? But yeah, look, I just say that I think Australia's response has been good, and New South Wales' response has been, in my view, very good as well. So, you know, we just have to rely on our health professionals, not all subject matter experts, because certainly our health professionals are.
Exactly. You know, Australia's a lucky country too, as well as New Zealand as well. But, yeah, apparently, did Scott Morrison go to Scotland or something like that?
What, you're talking about this year?
Yeah.
Well, I think he went to, I can't remember, but you're talking about when he went for climate change summit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly. I think that might have been Glasgow. I'm not 100% sure, though. That's, yeah, but and anyway, yes, he did. And that was sort of climate change summit, yes.
I wanted to ask about climate change because Bill Clinton, who else? Al Gore was always going on about climate change. Is climate change real, in your view?
I would say my personal view is yes, I do believe it's real. You know, I think people like Al Gore, for example, didn't do a lot of good for those that were sceptical, right? You know, that's hockey curve or J curve that's he presented in the movie, The Inconvenient Truth, which was proven to be false so many times. I think people from that point became sceptical. If you know, you can have a you know, previous vice president of the United States promoting untruths, people became very unskeptical. But my personal view is yes, it's very real. And I think that's what the New South Wales government is doing, and I'm seeing their net zero emissions strategy and other actions that we're taking, like we're requiring more national parks. You know, the Minister for Planning, he also has a role now in public spaces. You know, just trying to green up our communities again. There are simple things that we can do. It's not just about reducing emissions. I think we're certainly on the right track, and you know, I opened a car park in Leppington, a multi-storey car park in Leppington the other day, and what I was really pleased to see is when we went up to the roof, I had 1,300 solar panels on, which not provided more power that was needed to power the whole station, and you know, and which meant that was feeding energy back into the grid, but also they had 10 EV, electrical vehicle charging stations with capacity to go to 100. So those are things that I think that are smart things to do, and it's becoming more I wouldn't say cost effective, but the difference between what it used to cost and what it costs now, that gap is certainly narrowing. And you know, and I think there's no doubt that's an industry of the future, and that's kind of beginning as we speak when you look around the world. So, I think it's always. I know there are a lot of people that say, when we talk about spending money, we're talking about economic policies. We've got to leave this place in a better place for our grandchildren. Well, why isn't that true with regards to the climate change and environment?
Yeah, it's controversial topic, Peter. Because I've found Australia's getting hotter and hotter every year. Look, there was bushfires in Turkey this year, and you'd think how is Europe getting bad bushfire season? You don't normally hear about that as well. And 2020 was very bad as well.
Well, yeah, there's no question that even the beginning of this year, and through 2020, look, bad bushfires, but by the same token, this is not in any way suggesting that these bushfires don't have a reason why they're becoming potentially more horrific, like we saw in 2020, 2021. But bushfires have been around for a long time in Australia.
Yeah.
And so, look, talking about other regions of the world, I certainly wouldn't be experienced to talk about Europe. But, what I do actually take note of is when we're sending our volunteers from the RFS over to California, and, that's been happening for a while now. And so, I think there's certainly an element of climate change with regards to, the globe heating. But as I say, in New South Wales, we're taking initiatives to, as I say, not only towards net zero emissions, but also to, provide further greening to our environments. Like, you talk about the, urban heat wave. So I know in Camden, we're at least one of the fastest growing local government areas in Australia, is that, planning, we are looking at providing, more public, connected public spaces, and the same way that we're looking at that through the Aerotropolis, Western Sydney Aerotropolis, and even, one view I'd like, that I've got is my own personal view that, while we're talking about housing diversity and affordability, I'd like to see, if you're building a house, enough space in your front yard or backyard to at least plant a tree, not a shrub, but a tree.
Yeah, you can't, because all the houses in Oran Park and Mount Annan are built so close to each other. It's
Mount Annan, certainly they're probably, because they were built a while ago,
that's the new...
enough room to be planting trees there. But in Oran Park, look, in most cases in Oran Park, I think they've got backyards that are big enough to plant a tree in. But there are other areas, and I'm not going to name them, but where I think that there's not enough space around a house to actually plant a tree. And so that's just my personal view. Others may have a different view, but any opportunity we have, I think, to be and this is just a small measure, but be providing more greenery around urban areas. Just to protect against that urban heat wave that many people are aware of.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Peter. I want to say thank you for coming back on the podcast this morning on Monday. It's we've had a lot of cloudy weather lately. What do you got planned for 2022 in Parliament over Christmas? What are you up to?
I'll be taking my family away in January as we normally do. But other than that, it's just about getting some rest and rebooting for another busy year in 2022.
No, that's awesome, and always great to have you on the show. And
it's always a pleasure.
Anyone's listening, could learn something from Peter. Say hello to Peter at Narellan Town Centre by the sounds of it too, as well.
Yeah, so in May we made a move. So we're now at the Queen Street entrance off from Narellan Town Centre, directly opposite Australia Post. So always happy to have a chat to anybody in the electorate and see how we can help them best.
And what type of newspaper do you read, or what's your news media of choice?
To be honest, I don't read one. I read multiple sources.
Yeah.
I find if you read one of them, you're always going to get some sway in a particular directions. So my view is if you read, two or three of them, you get a more balanced view on what people are thinking.
Awesome.
Yeah.